So there's some interesting things happening with the January 6 protesters and their prosecutions, right? So it turns out they've been overcharging them, and they've been using this law that is supposed to go after corporate criminals who destroy evidence. So which was invented after the Enron fiasco. If you don't remember what the Enron fiasco is, it's not that important, but it was corporate malfeasance at the tippy top of corporations, and they were in bed with George Bush, which is why they got away with it for a long time. But it all came tumbling down, and as the Justice Department was trying to investigate them, they started to destroy evidence. And so the Justice Department was pissed off that they couldn't go and prosecute these people for doing that, so they had them write a law called the Sarbanes-Oxley Law, which makes that illegal, and you can put somebody in prison for 20 years. So it was a real threat to the corporate criminals. Don't do this if we're investigating you. Well, they've been using that law to prosecute January 6 peaceful protesters. So the Supreme Court justice this is from the Epoch Times, seems skeptical of January 6 obstruction charges used in the Trump case. Okay. Conservative Supreme Court justice seemed generally sympathetic on April 16th to a former police officer charged under an accounting reform law. That's the law I just told you about. It's an accounting reform. It's about, okay. After he entered the U.S. Capitol for 4 minutes on January 6th. So they're charging him with that law that is supposed to go after corporate criminals who destroy evidence when the government is investigating them. They're charging him with that. The case is so they can give him a big, long sentence, and that's how they're getting these long sentences. The case is being closely watched because one of the Supreme Court rules, once the Supreme Court rules, its decision could affect hundreds of January 6 prosecutions, including the January 6 related case against former President Donald Trump. This is real. Joseph Fisher from Jonestown, Pennsylvania, was indicted. By the way, we're going to be in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, doing comedy up in the Poconos this Friday. See you there. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. So Joseph Fisher from Jonestown, Pennsylvania, was indicted on several counts following the Capitol breach on January 6th, including obstructing an official proceeding under Enron-era obstruction law. That section 1512. Convictions under this section can lead to 20 years in prison.
You know, Jeff Skilling just got out yesterday from prison from Enron.
Who did?
Jeff Skilling.
Who's that?
From Enron.
The Enron
CEO.
guy?
Yeah, he's out. Maybe this will be out in time to help him out.
Okay. So just keep that in mind. Joseph Fisher's the one obstructing justice, while the police practically greeted each one of them with a hug and a Hawaiian flower wreath when they stepped inside the Capitol.
They put a Ken Lay over there.
Yeah. Nicely done. So here's what the law that they're prosecuting them with, and that the Supreme Court, I think, is going to strike down. Whoever corruptly alters, destroys, mutilates, or conceals a record, document, or other object, or attempts to do so with the intent to impair the object's integrity or availability for use in an official proceeding, or 2, otherwise obstructs, influences, or impedes any official proceeding, or attempts to do so, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years, or both. So that's what they're using.
How did this guy conceal or mutilate anything? How did he do that?
So Mr. Fisher argues that he should not have been charged under Section 1512, an evidence tampering provision of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act aimed at curbing wrongdoing on Wall Street. So they are twisting and bending the law to go after these protesters. And let's remember, 95% of them peaceful protesters. The legislation came in the wake of a fraud-related scandals at Enron Corporation and other. So they wrote this specifically for these Enron criminals who were real criminals, by the way. They were real criminals, and they hurt a lot of people. Enron employed dubious accounting practices to conceal falling profits and exaggerated earnings, and its employees reportedly began destroying paperwork when they learned that the indictments were in the works. So, by the way, this has already been struck down by an appellate court. Appeals court ruling that vacate. So this guy here got charged with the same thing, and he got a really long sentence. So they appealed this to an appeals court, and the appeals court. This is just like when did this happen? Like a couple weeks ago.
March 1st. Go down.
March 1st.
How did they say they tamper with evidence? Did he throw out his stupid outfit after the
So
thing?
Because in it has this tries to obstruct, influence, or impedes any official proceedings. So they're saying they were impeding official proceedings when they were trying to codify the election. That's what January 6th was all about.
Wow, Enron kept cleaner books than they are with that stretching of the law. Gaping the law at this point.
So this guy, they charged him with it, and the appeals court said, no, you can't do this. You can't use this Enron law to give this guy a word. They didn't overturn his conviction, but they said you can't use this Enron law to extend his imprisonment or his sentence.
Just because it's a complete inversion of the law?
It's because it's a complete... So, and that guy's name is, let me see, I have it here somewhere. This is Larry Rendell Brock. So this is him.
What's happening to that guy's face?
I don't know, right? Looks like he got shot with something. So some defendants who arrived at the so that's the big news. And so now so the Supreme Court is taking this on, and this could affect the sentences and the charging of hundreds of January 6th protesters. And let's remember what they're doing. They're trying to make felonies out of simple protesters who most of them are peaceful. And we've the videos that they hid, the ones that Tucker Carlson revealed,
violate the Enron law. It sounds like they should be prosecuted.
The cops were, taking selfies with them. They were all walking very orderly inside the red. Remember, Norm Macdonald tweeted that out. What kind of revolutionaries are respectful of the red velvet rope as they walk through the Capitol? And so they took them to the offices. The cops took the protesters to Mitch McConnell's and Nancy Pelosi's office and opened it for them. And so all that stuff, right? So this is making felons out of peaceful protesters. And of course, when Cornel West was on the show, he couldn't give a shit. Cornel West likes to say that I stand with all, what's the words he used, with oppressed people everywhere. He does not. He's an ivory tower phony.
Who still likes him?
Nobody. He gets less votes than RFK Jr., by the way. He's getting less of the black vote than Donald Trump.
Good.
What does that tell you?
Good.
So some defendants who arrived at the Capitol after Congress was evacuated on January 6th were also charged with obstructing an official proceeding. So that's the part they're charging them with, obstructing an official proceeding. But they're using it to charge people who showed up after the official proceeding was already over. Several defendants have argued unsuccessfully at trial that they couldn't have obstructed Congress because they weren't present at the Capitol until after the lawmakers left the complex. Mr. Fisher also says he left the complex before Congress attempted to move forward with certifying the election, and he was in Maryland at the time of the security breach.
And that was unsuccessful.
Yes. Lawyers argue that the accounting reform law under which Mr. Fisher and others have been charged is being used by the Department of Justice to prosecute people who were exercising their First Amendment right to protest the congressional certification of election results. So they were protesting the congressional certification of the results.
No, I wish that First Amendment wasn't so robust.
Until the January 6th prosecutions, the January 6th prosecutions, this thing, 1512, had never been used for anything other than evidence tampering. Ever.
Yeah, well.
So now they're using it to prosecute peaceful protesters.
Vaccine didn't used to mean I had to take it.
That's right.
Every 6 months for the rest of my life, Just let things change.
So Congress passed this statute to prevent the destruction of evidence. Keep that. That's what this is really invented for. And now they're twisting it. The January 6th prosecutions demonstrate that there are a host of felony and misdemeanor crimes that cover the alleged conduct. So there's already other laws that should cover this. You don't have to use this Enron law. A Sarbanes-Oxley-based Enron-driven evidence tampering statute is not one of those. So they're misapplying the law, and that's what they're asking the the Supreme Court to decide if they are, which they are. And so it looks like they might. Here's Justice Neil Gorsuch echoed concerns expressed by civil libertarians about the broad sweep of the legal provision. Would a sit-in that disrupts a trial or access to federal courthouse qualify for this? So, which people do all the time.
It should.
Would a heckler in today's audience at the Supreme Court, would a heckler in today's audience qualify? Or how about a heckler at the State of the Union address?
Lock them up.
Would pulling a fire alarm before a vote qualify for 20 years? And guess why he brings that up? Because Jabal Bowman did that.
I gave him the benefit of the doubt too, and that motherfucker did it on purpose.
No, he did it on purpose.
Well,
so Jabal Bowman did that to stop the vote because he wanted to make sure it included funding for Ukraine, right? That's what that was about.
I just thought he was so dumb that he
no, he wasn't.
He thought he was in the bathroom.
So here it is.
Shit in the hallway and thought he was flushing.
In December of 2023, Representative Jamal Bowman pled guilty to a misdemeanor for pulling a fire alarm in a congressional building. He pulled a fucking fire alarm during a session of Congress en route to voting on stopgap spending legislation. He pulled a fire alarm.
Yeah.
And he only got charged with a misdemeanor. Republicans compared him to January 6 rioters, but Mr. Bowman claimed he made a mistake. He agreed to pay a $1,000 fine. He was not charged under the Sarbanes-Oxley provision.
Do you notice how all these things will never hold? They all are counting on, no, we're just going to do it this one time.
That's right.
And then it'll be fine, which is not how law works.
We're just using this for Trump. That's not the rest of the real estate developers. We're just doing this to January 6 protesters, not the rest of protesters.
All that DEI shit, which I love Tyler Fisher this day for suing that agent over that. They all thought you could just do all this crazy nonsense. And there was because nobody was suing.
Right.
Nobody was doing anything. Now everybody is.
Justice Samuel Alito asked if protesters obstructing a trial would violate the statute. And here's what the prosecutor for the United States government says. For all the protests that have occurred in this court, the Justice Department has not charged any serious offenses. And no, this is the justice talking. And I don't think any one of these protesters has been sentenced to even 1 day in prison. But why isn't that a violation of 1512C Section 2, he asked. So what's the difference between the January 6 protesters and people who protest at the Supreme Court? And the prosecutor for the United States government says there would be the backstop of needing to prove corrupt intent. What?
You know what this reminds me of? And I won't say the name, but somebody works in an industry. But and she goes, and she wasn't bright enough not to say this. Why is it okay the peaceful but fiery BLM riots? Why is that not violence?
That's coming. They're going to ask.
And this chick goes, it's not violence if it's for the right reason. I swear to God, that's a quote of a grown woman who works in the industry. She goes, it's not violence.
You mean in show business?
Yeah, it's not violence if it's for the right reason. Mull that over.
Justice Alito asked whether protesters blocking roads and bridges around the nation's capital, as happened on April 15th when pro-Palestinian protesters shut down the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, would violate the statute. The prosecutor for the United States said did not believe that would violate the statute. Really? Okay. So...
Well, supporting Hamas isn't corrupt because Bibi does
it. Justice Amy Coney Barrett asked if the protesters could have been charged under the section even if they had not breached the Capitol. Could they be charged even if they didn't go inside the Capitol?
Breached it? Cops opened the doors. That's not a breach.
So
a breach is like I have to blow it open.
I know. So this is the question she asked. She says if they had remained outside chanting slogans, but their goal was to stop the proceeding inside, stop the counting of votes, would that violate the statute? The justice asked the prosecutor for the United States. And here's what she said. Said that if that happened when Congress had to go into recess from a joint session because of the security risk, then it probably would be chargeable.
If we could trump it up, those would be charges, yeah. If we could trump up those charges, definitely.
So what she's pretending is that, yeah. Well, yeah, that would also fall. We would charge peaceful protesters chanting outside Congress with the Sarbanes-Oxley law meant to go after corporate Wall Street criminals. So do you see what is happening here?
Most people don't see what is happening here.
Most people don't see. So they're selectively using the law to prosecute just one, but now she has to pretend that no, this could be used for lots of people. Because if she said the truth there, which that would be asinine and stupid, and nobody would stand for giving people 20 years in prison for peacefully chanting outside of Congress and protest.
Why not?
She has to pretend. She has to pretend that they would.
Yeah. They want us on the Canada program with the life in prison for like hate speech shit. This is the global program.
So later in his rebuttal, Mr. Green said prosecuting people under, so this is the lawyer for that guy. He said that prosecuting people under this section for protesting would chill protected activities. Of course it would. People are going to worry about the kinds of protests they engage in, even if they're peaceful, because the government has this weapon. The Supreme Court is expected to rule on the case Fisher versus the United States by the end of June.
I have never felt such warm feelings towards the French Revolution in my entire life.
I know.
Now. I've always thought of it as a really bad thing, and I was watching a thing about it last night, and the conditions were remarkably similar. I mean, it was remarkable. They had blown all their money on foreign wars. Okay, They would do nothing for the people, and then what the little stupid things they tried to do backfired on them big time. And it couldn't be more like that. I mean, it just couldn't be more like that. And by the way, I don't think that was the Illuminati behind that. That was the incompetence of the ruling class. Everyone that's in our ruling classes should wear wigs and knee socks and a little pimpernel because they're that much worthless.
I really do think that there's going to have to be some form of a real revolution in America. I'm not smart enough to know what that is, but there has to be a real, like maybe if all the farmers in French farmers and the Netherlands farmers and the Yellow Jackets and the truckers and we need something like all those people to come together. Those types of people in the United States to come together.
Oh, you're going to get charged under that new provision.
I know,
like
right?
Somebody wants to get charged.
That's right.
With an overreaching use of the law.
Come see us on tour. We're going to be in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, Cortland, New York, Oakmont, Pennsylvania, El Paso, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Vancouver, British Columbia. First show sold out. Denver, Colorado, Ashland, Virginia, Athens, Georgia, and Minneapolis. We're coming back to Minneapolis. If you couldn't get tickets last time, there'll be some available this time. We're doing 2 shows. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets.